Today we are going to be building. Earlier, I streamed and set everything up, and I had my normal internet stuff. But it dawned on me that the internet breaks for like 10 or 15 minutes. And I thought that meant I needed to end it, but maybe it means I just need to take a break, and then I can do another episode if I feel like it. And today, I feel like it. We set up this earlier, and this is going to be the sort of visual pattern that we're going to use for the castle-themed elements of this build. And all of the material that we've gotten so far that we're going to be building with is acquired from goblin camps in the plains on Path of Magic. You'll find that you get a lot more of other metals instead of just black metal scraps. Goblins are a source of all metals in the game. The idea here is to allow people to make a base in the plains, and you can do pretty much all the stuff and progress really far using just plains acquisition, so to speak. And this is totally because I love goblin camps. I like building castle-like things, so why not make goblin camps provide castle-like things and building materials for that? Makes sense? So give me a moment here. I'm going to collect my thoughts. You see, what I want to work on is a kitchen, because I have a problem at the moment in that there's pretty much no food. I've found a tiny bit more food. I got a couple stamina foods here, so it's not the end of the world, but that's going to run out real quick, and that's limiting everything else. So it's time to start setting everything up. But before I get into that, I'll show just what I'm thinking for this. So this is going to be the outside pattern. We have a base of stone. These walls are actually like 3 layers. There's the arch layer, the first part, then there's this center piece that holds the door, right? And we have a groused-on top, and then these kind of ashwood middle bits, right? And then there's an issue here with the gate clipping. I'll deal with that another time. But then we need to finish up the back end here, and I was feels good. This is what I want. The only thing left to figure out here is how to handle this part. The interior part of the wall. I don't think it needs the same castle look, but I'm not sure. This to me feels like something is missing. So maybe this is our chance to use the ashwood decorator from earlier, but also I'm not entirely sure. So let's place a couple things and just kind of mess around a bit here and see how it feels. I'm gonna take this to auto, and we're gonna like center it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not feeling that magic. I did like how these were on the exterior, but for now, no. Maybe it's something groused-on related. Maybe if I just do a layer of groused-on up here. Let's see how that feels. Well, I don't think it hurts. It helps the transition from the stone to the stone tile be a little bit softer. I feel like something is missing though. Like, I'm not sure how to put my finger on it. And this is gonna be what players who are inside the base see. I don't really, well, maybe something like this. Let's see, what would that look like? I mean, I don't dislike it. I like it more than the other one, but Well, what if I just kept a similar pattern, right? outside, I had these things going down. So what if that's how it is here? Just same thing, pretty much. Oops. I see. So sometimes you have to shift click, otherwise it's not going to show up. Good to know. So that'll find the center, and then I shift to make it place up a bit. And then I can pop it. Alright. Okay. Well, this looks more promising. I think I'll just continue with a similar pattern. So the only difference, really, is that this external part has these crenellations. Or, I don't know if they're actually called crenellations, but that's what I'm going to call them. And then the internal part here just has a little ledge. So it makes it a little bit harder to pull off of the wall. But you can still go over it if you just you're persistent, right? So really the only other problem now, we have a way to get up, we have an interior, we have an exterior. But the only problem is that the gate clips into itself that way, and it looks weird, right? But I have a feeling that because this wall is now 3 layers, we can make this middle layer more shallow and give the gate the full space that it needs, right? Because I think the gate is actually a smaller, it's not 3 meters, it's 4 meters total, right? Yeah, because each piece is 2 meters. So we're trying to fit it into a 3 meter space, right? Which is causing problems. And it's making that clipping thing happen. And because of the placement of these pillars, that's going to occur regardless. So I have to sort of make a decision about it. I could just not care that it clips. I could make it so that it clips even more. And I think that that's what I'm gonna do, because I don't really mind that it visually clips. What I mind is that it's easy to use. That's what I care about. So here, I can probably make a little pocket for the door that makes the hitbox more accessible. And that'll be all that we need to do. So to handle that, let's make just some more blocks. And instead of using these 2 meter things here, we'll space it like this. And that might mean we need to do something there to cover that gap. So I suppose some grousing would come in handy here, because we can use this just for this pocket area to close that gap in the stone. And then that's going to make the stone more visually believable, because it won't have that visual gap there, right? So it looks like we can just roll with that there. And we'll do the same thing here. All right, solid, solid, looking good. So now we have these little gaps, and then this should allow us to make the door look more natural. And it looks like the gap actually needs to be 1 unit higher on both sides. So let's fill that up here. All right, now let's see how the door feels, because not only do we want it to visually not have any gaps in it, but we want it to be usable, right? So first things first, let's establish a center point somehow, visually. In this case, it doesn't have to be completely perfect. So I'm just going to align this beam here, this darkwood pole, in roughly the center. I'm going to break snap point and just shift click. And then I'm going to use this to help place the door. So we're going to go to the side of it like this, and then do that again. like that, and then get rid of this and see how it looks. So here we have, I'd say that's placed pretty well, to be honest. Now it's a matter of figuring out how we want to handle the clipping, because it still clips into place like that, right? And for me, I don't really mind. The problem is more that when you look at this spot, you can't open or close the door. So that makes it a little harder to use. So by adding this gap, we make it so that the player has more of a hitbox to access, right? But at the same time, maybe it would be better if we kind of clipped the gate in a little bit here. We could make it so these two pieces are kind of in the same place, if you know what I mean. Because that way they would clip into each other when they're shut, and when they're open, they would go to the side. And I think probably that's what I'll do. I'm just trying to figure out what's the easiest way to place that properly. I guess to offset it first, right? So I'm gonna reduce this. This piece will be like 1/2 meter shorter, right? So I guess if I put... I'm trying to wrap my head around how to do this properly. Okay. Let's just kind of wing it here. We're gonna get the first piece to be something like this. And then we want the second piece to clip into it. So I need to look somewhere else. Here we go. And place it. And let's try and get it to be symmetrical. Let's see how this works. If we get it to clip into itself, I think if I align these up, then the door handle will line up. I should sort of be looking at that, but it's too late at this point. Can do it just like this. Yeah, there you go. So this still clips into itself, but I don't mind that as much, because then this looks more natural, right? So we still have a little bit of clipping going in there, but it's not anywhere near as visually intense as it was earlier. But there we go, we still have quite an intense one. So it looks like maybe these actually have to be clipped enough that they offset and create two handles again, because they're clipping into each other, if that makes sense. So let's see how that looks, because I think that might actually be easier to do, because I can make the gate like this, right? That would normally be in the center, but now I want to really offset it, so I'm actually going to take it all the way in like this. And then we're going to do the same thing, except with the other snap point here. Let's go to auto. That would be where it would be normally, but we want the gate to go all the way. Ah, I see. So there is actually too far. So let's try just like this, so I can understand how I would need to do it properly, okay? So the shape sort of works. There's a little bit of weirdness there. But this would make the gates shallow enough that they don't have that external clipping thing. I just did the math wrong for the center point in my head. Right? So basically... Okay, I see where it needs to be. I'm gonna make just a little marker for myself. Pretty much that needs to be the edge of the door. So... let's see if I can get it right this time. And once I get this right once, then I'll know how to do it. I'm just sort of experimenting. Because I'll probably make a couple more of these doorways, right? So we don't want it to be here. We actually want to look at this door and line it up, I believe, like this, right? Because the center point... oh no, the center's there. Okay, I think I get it now. We actually want to line the center up with the edge of the interior like this. Hey, welcome, Wackarot. I'm sorry about my my bad stream connection at the moment. But basically, when you join, you can do a command. Palm, enter. So basically, say palm and then question mark. You see what this does? This shows you some reading that you can do to learn about some of the basic mechanics. Path of Magic has a lot of different things. So it can be confusing at first because you'll play it like normal Valheim and you won't realize just how many things are changed. So it's good to know that there is that basic reading you can do at any point. You have to type say and then POM question mark, and then it will give you some basics to work with, okay? Aside from that, gameplay-wise, when you first join Path of Magic, the thing to keep in mind is that there is a path, and that path goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, goes through the Ashlands, past the Ashlands, even further than that, and then wraps all the way up to the deep north, awaiting the update. And then it will go through the deep north and spiral around. The idea is this not endless path, but a really long thing. So your progression on Palm is basically about just exploring this path and finding a point that you want to build something. And the further down the path you get, the more need of buildings there are. In the beginning, there's lots of places people can stop by and establish a checkpoint or try something similar. But as you get further and closer to the Ashlands and past the Ashlands, there's almost no checkpoints and no buildings. And past the Ashlands, there's Black Forest areas because it wraps back up, right? So there's all sorts of different areas along the path that are accessible. And that's the basics of it. You should know about this command, palm question mark. You have to do the say part, so palm question mark like that. And then that'll give you access to some more systems, so I don't over explain everything. And then when you join, mechanically, you can travel down the path and explore it. I will say Palm is a no map, no portal server, so it's not everyone's cup of tea, so to speak. And I think that a good way to figure out if it's for you or not is simply to join, and you can use an old character if you want, and just kind of explore down the path and see how you feel. Just keep in mind the path is really long. It's not something that can just be traversed in a couple minutes. Like as some of you saw when I was doing the Ashlands thing, I know how mechanics work and was trying my best, and I still died like a bunch of times and had to like really change strategies in order to get through the Ashlands just by running. So there's a lot of hazards and things on the way. And in general, it's all about making the no map, no portals experience more accessible to people. I don't believe it's like necessarily a try hard kind of situation, but some people might enjoy it that way. It really depends on the kind of things you enjoy with Valheim, to be honest. But anyone's welcome to join. And I personally, I really like games like Dark Souls, Valheim. These games have inspired me a lot. So if you like Dark Souls and you like building games, then you'll probably like the Path of Magic experience. But if you like staying alive in Valheim and never dying, and you pride yourself on knowing all of the mechanics, and you need them to be as you expect them to be, you might be frustrated when you play on Path of Magic. Because Path of Magic is all about making a server more long-lasting, making the world itself feel more viable in the long run and immersive. Because normal Valheim doesn't really do that well. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just how it is, right? That they don't intend to. So when you put it on a server, you come up with problems because a server needs to stay alive over a long period of time. Or at least, let's say, is benefited by staying alive over a long period of time. Whereas an individual play session with friends, it's fine if it's more like a board game, right? And Palm, a lot of it is about figuring out how to rebalance things so that works. So that Valheim works more effectively when it's put on a server in the long run. Like, how can a world stay alive and be friendly to multiple different kinds of players who join either early on or later on, right? Because this world's been around for a year and 2 months, I think, at this point. A year and a month. But that doesn't mean that, like, new players can't benefit, right? Because things are respawning, and there's mechanics to reset things, and all sorts of stuff. So, that's my mentality in general. But I'll get back to this building thing here, and we can see that pretty much this is what I was going for. We still have a tiny bit here, but I'm just gonna accept that. I'm not too worried about it. I just wanted to make the door be more usable. And also not be so obviously a clipping mess whenever it goes into the wall, right? And so now it clips there, but then it clips into like a solid design. I like how it looks. It looks kind of cool with this kind of black bead in the center here. But I guess I could fix this, because right now pretty much I placed the first one a little bit too far. So why don't I actually do that right? So let's do the trick here. There we go. And we're going to use the top inner. And it looks like we actually need this to be just a little bit over. Okay? So we're going to get rid of this one. And then probably even as little as that much will be fine. And so now let's place the next one. And we're going to go for like a little bit more of that sort of black beam in the center. You see what I'm going at? When we clip it right, there's that black indent in the center. So if I make that a little bit bigger, it seems to work well. Let's go with that. Alright, that looks solid to me. And it's not perfectly centered, but I'd say it's actually it's pretty solid. That's way better than I was expecting. Alright, and so now let's see if we open and close it. Looks good on that side. Hey, it clips a little bit for the moment, but that's alright. Honestly, I was willing to accept it before. So now there's this kind of interesting... Honestly, I kind of like that gap. I don't know. It feels almost... I don't know, like it does... Like it's to give the mechanics space or something. I don't know. I like the aesthetic of that. The only thing I'll add here is these top parts. How should this be handled? I guess just simply, right? We can clip these two into each other. That looks solid. It only would need one kind of border here. Oh, not even a border. I know what I can do. I can just continue that Grouston pattern. So just in this part there, we get some Grouston to cover the gap. Hey, all right, I dig it. I dig it. Now let's place some temporary little torches out here. I'm gonna have to start learning to use something else because that's not gonna work. But for now, it's all right. Hey, looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Okay. This, yeah, I don't know why I like that, but I like that there's that gap there. It seems... I just don't like this gap here, so let's patch this one up too. Cool. Alright, now I'm happy with this interior. Now, let's actually see. What if I did patch the gap up all the way? And made it like this. do that on one side. For some reason, I seem to like this. I don't really understand why. But then on the other side, I don't. So I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna make it... Maybe it's because I'm fond of asymmetry, I don't know. I'll just do it like this. Probably what's tripping me out is the hardness of this angle right here. So let's see if I can do some kind of trick to reduce that. Maybe if I put in... Oh, what if I use one of those tapered pillars? How would that feel if it's right here? Ooh, I can tilt it. Okay, okay. These things are cool. I like Growston. I kind of like how that looks. Yeah, okay, okay. I'm happy with this. That looks cool. So that one's like that, and then does this need to tilt? No, it's fine. Cool. Okay. And I guess I can do the same thing here. Yeah, that looks cool. Okay. Alright, I know I'm just geeking out about minor details. Honestly, the Growston is really cool. The way it like adds little elements to things. That's kind of trippy. I like that. Oh. It's subtle. But I didn't even realize I can tilt these things. That makes sense. I should probably do that with this as well, so... Oh, I did the wrong thing. There we go. We're trying to copy this piece. Yeah, there we go. Get rid of that one. And now I want to tilt it so it matches. Ooh, that would have been smarter. I see. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I like the kind of... I don't know, it gives an interesting element to it. And for now, I'll just leave those like that. I guess I can see what it looks like. But it's going to introduce a clipping thing, right? Yeah. I'll just skip out on this for now. I dig the accidental discovery, though. That's why, honestly, I've found... I don't know if this is how it works for other people. But for me, it's almost as if the more I trust myself to know what's best, the worse I do. And that I need to actually just sort of leave things be, if that makes sense. Am I doing this wrong here? Let's see. And then if I just go with the flow, like, cool stuff happens. But the more I try and make cool stuff happen, the less cool stuff happens. Ah, is there some kind of weirdness here? Is that what's going on? Why is this block, like, closer than the other one is? Seems a bit bizarre. Yeah, alright. That works. Hey, okay, cool. Yeah, I like how this looks. It's pretty subtle, but cool little element. I'm into the trim of different pieces. And then the true ultimate test, I've just been winging it so far, but can we get a cart through it? I'm pretty sure we can just fine. But who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong. No, everything's good. Hey, we even got a little bit of wiggle room. That's great. Hey, honestly, I'm quite happy with this door. It came out pretty good. And then I could also, yeah, let's just for consistency's sake, we'll do the same thing with the Growston in this area. So it starts with the tapered pillar, clipped up into the top of it, right? Like, there we go, using that one. And inverted or rotated so you see the whole face, right? So let's do that with that spot, and then also same thing here. Just like this. Now we keep going down. Cool. Hey, honestly, I'm quite happy about this. I feel like this is the solid standard for this build. And it allows us to use marble and stone and like integrate them together. You know what I would need to figure out though is some way to integrate black marble, but for now maybe the interior can have some kind of black marble element, or there can be an outside black marble fence. We can figure that out later. For now though, this looks fine, and I'm going to move forward because if I go downstairs, I should find that there... Oh, dang, I didn't realize the ghost was there. Ah, that's right, I suffocated in the smoke. I forgot about that. I put the bed in a bad spot. C'est la vie. Oh, that ghost destroyed the bed too? Well, such is life. I guess I should show how what you should do when you join on Path of Magic, because basically that's where we are now. We're in the center of the world, and I got wrecked. Basically, I died in smoke earlier, and I forgot that when you die, as long as you're not in the meadows, sometimes a ghost shows up, your soul, so to speak. And I died in smoke on top of the bed. And I should have realized that that would have meant that a ghost might show up later. And I actually heard the ghost, but I disregarded it. So I fully deserve the situation that I found myself in. But I'm gonna use this as a chance to stop by some other places and bring some materials, specifically some food. So I may as well talk to any of you who do actually join about when you first join. This is the main path here. And if you keep following it, you'll get to this inn where you can claim a bed. And that's the first step. While you're going on the way, it's worth doing some reading. And you can activate the beginning of the help by typing /say POM. That's going to show you all of these other commands, so you can learn about different systems that are available in Path of Magic. This is not a comprehensive system of everything that is available. It is only a portion of it. I would say one of the more important ones to know about is arrows. So if you do say arrows, then you'll get some messages explaining that the arrows are different in Path of Magic. Fire arrows explode, frost arrows make frost novas, poison arrows do AoE, and silver arrows are one of the more damaging AoEs to undead in the game. And those are all things that you can read about. And then once you join, you'll be able to get to this area quite quickly. And you can look around for a spawn spot and claim one. There's usually plenty of beds here. As you travel down the path, you'll notice a couple different illustrations of certain mechanics. So here we have the trade shelf, right? Here we can see that there are sausages for sale. There are 1 mushroom each, and there are 2 remaining. And here we also have sausages for sale, and these are for raspberries. That's why I picked these raspberries earlier. And I want to get a decent amount of sausages for this voyage, so I'm going to trade 10 raspberries. And I open the shelf, and look at that. I lost 10 raspberries, I got 10 sausages. Now I have some basic food to get started. And then I can't open these chests, but the creator of this trade shelf can. Because believe it or not, this isn't some development only thing. That's actually a mechanic that players are able to do as well. Players can create their own trade shelves. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to keep traveling down the path. And I'm going to make the rest of this stream about getting back to the Plains Castle base that I've started establishing. It was quite fitting to die when I did, to be honest, because the wool felt nice. Like, I was like, oh wow, this is actually better than I thought it would be. I'm not saying it's perfect, don't get me wrong, but this is the first time that I've built with the combination of Growston and stone, and like really enjoyed how it came out and how it felt. You know what I mean? So that's the Eek altar, and by the way, when you first join, you're gonna be compulsed to try and summon Eek, but don't do that, trust me. Seriously, don't do it, you're gonna get killed. Instead, you'll come to the Eek altar, and then read the runestone, which will tell you that you need to get a neck trophy, a boar trophy, a pile of flint, and 2 piles of wood. And then you open the chest, and you can put all those things in there, and then that'll allow you to get the progression item that you would normally get from killing Eekter. On Path of Magic, you don't have to kill bosses. You just do boss chests to get items that way. Now, it is possible to kill bosses, but that's a whole other rant on its own, and I'm gonna try my best not to get too into that, because I feel like so far on the live stream, I tend to get too distracted by trying to explain too many different mechanics. And it'll be more approachable for other players who are new if I only explain mechanics that are relevant or someone asks about. And if I'm not doing that, then I should be sort of having fun, showing enthusiasm, sharing a story about something, talking about game development, that kind of thing. And something I've noticed is like something magical happens running down a path. So why not take this opportunity while I have to travel all the way back to the plains I was just in to explain what originated the Path of Magic. Because there was actually something that happened, an experience in another game. A couple experiences, to be honest. And these experiences led to this idea of making gameplay that revolves around traveling down a path, instead of looking at maps. And I didn't know it at the time, but Valheim created a perfect opportunity to do that. And here's what was happening. I was playing, I think it was classic World of Warcraft at the time. Not vanilla, not when it first came out, but when they originally launched, I think what are now called Era servers. These older servers remade in the vanilla WoW experience, but with players who have all sort of grown up for the most part and are revisiting nostalgia. And that's also what I was doing. Prior to that, I was under the impression that it was impossible to re-experience the same kind of childhood nostalgic joy that I had experienced as a kid playing video games. And the reason I thought this is because I had actually tried to get into World of Warcraft again 5 times as I was older. And it never worked. I could never bring myself to want to keep logging in after like maybe a week or 2 of playing the game. I would try a new expansion and then I would just feel like, I don't know, like it just didn't matter. I just didn't care. And I thought that that was happening because I had changed. I had become older and jaded, and I was no longer able to enjoy games in the same way. But then, fast forward a decade or so, Era comes out, or what's now called Era, Classic, and I found myself able to have a shockingly incredible experience that wasn't just a nostalgia trip. I like joined a guild and had an absolute blast and played with a couple people I know, and then stopped playing with them, played with other people, and it was awesome. I was able to, so to speak, relive and do all the things I wanted to do as a kid, and I absolutely loved it. I got to kite Teramis around and get a bunch of gear and like mess around in PvP and do all sorts of other stuff, and I had an absolute blast. And this shocked me because it didn't match my worldview. I thought I wasn't capable of enjoying games like that anymore. And especially with World of Warcraft, I had tried. Like I said, I tried 5 times after vanilla to get back into World of Warcraft, and I never was able to. I just didn't care about it. I would try and play, and then I just, like, it didn't matter. I couldn't care about the game. I don't know why, but it just didn't feel real. And I know that it's a video game, so of course it's like not real, so to speak. But when I care about a game, it feels real to me. That's why I have fun, if that makes any sense. And that just wasn't happening, right, with normal WoW for me. And then I had that experience, and I got super into Classic, and it made me realize, no, it's not that I was young, and I was just able to have fun, and now I'm not. It was the circumstance of my life, and the gameplay loops, and the things that occurred that allowed me to enjoy video games the way that I did. And what I found out is there were some similarities in when I played Era and when I was a kid. You see, when I played Era, my life had recently changed a lot and gotten a lot less stressful. And I also had a few other friends who really liked World of Warcraft as well, and were able to really get into it. Makes sense? So when I played with them, it was a lot like when I played as a kid. When I played as a kid, I had friends in middle school, and I would talk to them in school about World of Warcraft, and we would talk. I remember we would talk in gym, we would talk in math, we would talk in physical health education or whatever it was, about like the quests we were doing in World of Warcraft and what happened and the crazy things that had happened, or the ridiculous things someone had done going somewhere they weren't supposed to go, and all of those things. And I see that act is a fundamental part of immersion in the game world. And hear me out for a second, because it's a little bit counterintuitive. Essentially what I'm saying is that for you to feel that level of immersion you felt as a kid, you need to talk to people who also really enjoy the game and talk to you back about it. That's the sort of magic sauce, the secret thing that was going on hidden in the background when you were a child. It's not that you grew up and you can't enjoy games anymore. It's that everyone you're around, and probably yourself as well, became crippled by the pressure of society to do other things, judgmental things people have said about you, statements they've made about the fact that you play games. I got a secret for you. People who don't play games get judged just as much as us, so to speak, gamers. So take all that stuff with a grain of salt, because for the most part, as long as you're happy and you truly can wake up and do things you care about, it doesn't matter what other people think about it. It doesn't matter. Oh, a freaking whoa, calm down, Mr. Wolf, calm down. I was not ready for that. I was not ready for that. I really just genuinely was not. Alright, you guys are gonna take that wolf out for me? Please? I don't want to kill him. Okay, I don't have to anymore. Whoa, that was intense. I'm sorry, I was talking about deep game dev related stuff, and then oof, that just totally derailed me. Give me a moment. I'm gonna sip this tea and recollect my train of thought. Alright, this is coffee, not tea. Lesson learned. So I was talking about this childhood experience I had with WoW, right? And what actually leads to immersion in games. As I mentioned, I believe that the key is being able to socialize with other humans outside of the game world. And this is the thing that adults tend to lose that children have plentifully. I don't think that it's necessary. It's more that for a long time, video gaming in general just wasn't... It was sort of like a... And still is for the most part. It's more mainstream now. But let me put it this way. People aren't going to be, like, supportive of you playing video games all the time. Even if, like, it's really meaningful for you and brings you a lot of joy, and you learn from them and you want to make games, like, you're gonna be judged for being lazy irregardless to how you actually behave. Like, let's say you spend all of your time studying and doing these things about game development or whatever, and you play games and you're genuinely, like, studying games to learn how to do them, like, to the best of your abilities and to the way that you want to. Like, you're gonna encounter a lot of situations where people judge you and consider you lazy simply because you care about video games and that you value that. And the reason I bring this up is because you should understand that, like, a lot of people are miserable and they don't know anything about being happy. Like, I'll just be straight up with you. They actively get in the way of their own happiness. So if you seek to satisfy these people, most people, you'll become miserable and you won't be able to enjoy things. And if you want to actually enjoy games, it's all about finding games that allow you to play them and sort of have wholesome connection with others who you feel some level of connection to. And that's why Discord is such a big thing. Like, if you think about it, in a lot of other situations, we're really adverse to these big monopoly tech platforms, right? Yet, as a gamer, like, using Discord, and I don't know about if you're, like, using console, maybe it's not as common. But if you're playing on PC, and you play games, I mean, you probably have used Discord. You know what I mean? It's definitely, that platform has really, really become like a main medium of communication among gamers. Quite interesting if you think about it, because do chefs and people who cook, or people who weave, or people who play sports have a purely dedicated platform that millions and millions of them use across the world, all over the place? I don't think so. Beloved Queen says, can you easily move a cart on the iron like that? Yeah, I know visually it looks like this would be clunky, but it's considered a flat surface as far as the cart is concerned. So you don't need to worry about that. However, if your cart is full of weight, then you will have trouble at the staircases. So on something flat like this, you could probably be fine with 2,000 pounds or less. But if you start having to take it up staircases, which is going to happen at multiple points throughout the path, then you're going to need a lighter cart. You might be able to do, with patience, a 2,000 pound cart. But let's say you have a 4,000 pound cart. Nah, that thing's not crossing those stairs. You gotta be very patient with that. Oof, this looks dangerous. Sometimes the path is safer. And in general, when it's in Skypath mode, you're pretty pretty much safe. Now, don't quote me on that, because you're never truly safe. You know, you could get off the path, a monster could get onto the path, a monster could chuck a fireball under the path and blow you up. There's all sorts of different things that might occur while you're traveling down the path. But in general, you're most safe if it's a sky path. If it's a normal path on the terrain, you should assume that there's danger there. And in a lot of places, the path will actually weave up and down. So it'll go into sky path mode, and then it'll go down into the normal mode. And Beloved Queen says, I've never seen a path like that. How is it supported? Is it a mod for a sky path? Well, those are great questions. Let me make sure that I set my spawn before I forget about that. And I'm going to reset my rested buff here. Take a moment. And then I'll explain the history of it. Because this server, Path of Magic, which is now a demonstration of EWP customization, combined with a path that travels on and on and on and on and on through loads and loads of different biomes, and you can just travel down the path and explore if you want to. And it'll take longer than one session to get to the end. I guess consider that a challenge if you want to be challenged. But it didn't start that way. And basically, when I started, I thought it was better for players to build these paths. So it started as a server called Path to Ashlands. In Path to Ashlands, we as the players built paths. So it was not like this. And it took a long time. And what I learned over the month as I updated things was that there's more benefit to players. They seem to have more fun when large infrastructure, not buildings, I really want to emphasize that. I'm not talking about building structures for the player. I'm talking about infrastructural paths. Players seem to enjoy when there are these really large, I call them arterial paths, that are pre-built, particularly on no map, no portal servers. This allows the server administrators to funnel access to certain areas through building paths. For me personally, it's also a mechanical thing. As I mentioned, it didn't start that way. We started with the mentality that the players will enjoy building the paths themselves. So if I were to build large paths, I would take the gameplay experience sort of away from them. I don't really believe that that's the case anymore. What I came to believe is that on a no map, no portal world in particular, the paths work fantastically at helping make no map in particular more manageable. Because it sort of separates your world into multiple parts. You have the parts accessible on the path. Makes sense? Those parts are easier because you don't get lost so much. Whereas the parts off of the path are more like a traditional no map, no portal experience. They are significantly harder. This helps break the experience up and make it more accessible. It also has a few other interesting consequences, such as the fact that players' bases, after that player leaves, end up remaining some level of useful, because new players can explore down the path and use these previous bases that existed as checkpoints. And the basic progression, as you explore Path of Magic, is to explore the path and kind of use people's bases as places that you can stop for a moment and catch a checkpoint. Now, in this case, I'm about to have a bad situation with this wolf, so let's see if I can fix it here. Alright. And then also, one of the hens has just laid her egg, so she is flipping out. Give me a moment. Let's see. Ah, she's good? She calmed down? No, she must have laid an egg. That's what they do. Is it Specs? Well, she seems alright now. I'll keep going. Alright. So, to answer your question about if it's a mod for a Skypath, it sort of is. Like, you don't need a mod to join the server and travel down it. But I did use mods to construct the Skypaths. Because what I found is that not only what I talked about earlier, but also when you make Skypaths that are above boat height, top wave height, it opens the world up so that people aren't forced to sail as much. And I personally believe that Valheim shines more when players do things because they genuinely want to, and they have many options, rather than the player being forced to do something because that's the only way to do it. To use sailing as an example, I love sailing. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't sail. What I'm saying is that I don't like that players are forced to sail to get to a new continent. I think that it should be another option. And Skypaths allow us to have both worlds. You can sail and explore, but also you can explore down the main path. This prevents you from getting lost as easily, and as you saw with me, I just lost my spawn and spawned at the center of the world, and I've been able to slowly progress back up to this point. And now all I need to do is make it down into the plains over here and up onto that hill. And that's where the base that I died in that we're working on is. Thanks to the path, this is completely possible, combined with the player bases that have been made before and the checkpoints. And for me, that's the gameplay loop that I like to keep going on the Path of Magic. And it's why I've come up with this philosophy now, where the path is made already. And then what players do is they build buildings along the path. They make bases a little bit away from the path. That way they have things that they can do that are relevant to the different biomes people play in, and as long as the path continues on and on and on and on, then there's always more and more places to go and checkpoints to build. As it is now, the path goes incredibly far. In fact, why don't I just show you? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show a little demonstration real quick of just how extensive the path actually is. So I'll log on to the development character, but not onto the server. Instead, I'm going to log on to just another world that has the same map as the server. This will load my character's map. And then I'll show you just how far the path that we're on right now goes. Because I'm actually at quite a good stopping point for Lab Rat's stream. I'm almost back to the base, so I can start the next one with a little bit of an adventure to get back. And for now, what I want to show you is the path itself. So this is the beginning. You start at the spawn, right? You just saw me go from the beginning here all the way through. That's where each spawn is, all the way down, all the way down here to this area. And the base we are starting to build is right here in this area. Give me a moment here, I think. I can brighten things up a bit. There we go, that's better. But the path itself keeps going. So you can imagine like this is the beginning experience, the start, the early game of Path of Magic. You have a meadows, a really deep black forest, some mountains, plains, and a swamp. And all of the relevant things according to that. But that isn't the entire game. The path itself continues. It goes over here, crosses the ocean, goes through more plains, goes through another area that's highly developed, into the Mistlands, near plains, and then through an entire stretch of Mistlands, down into a Black Forest Plains mountain area known as the Last Chance, and then across the ocean and into the Ashlands. It proceeds to go through the entirety of the Ashlands, but before it does so, it stops at a special safe zone called the Citadel, which is an area designed for players to experience the Ashlands without all of the danger. They travel along the sky path and then eventually get here. And then they can set up a base or something without fear of getting hurt by Ashland's monsters, because the walls of the Citadel are all invincible. So actually, I am on the dev character, so why don't I show this off a little bit? This is an old world, so what you're about to see isn't necessarily going to look exactly the same as current Palm. But I'm going to show you the Citadel and some other little hotspots along the path, so you can get a better sense of what's going on here. So this is the Citadel. It's in the Ashlands, early on in the path, connected only by Skypath. So it's completely possible to just join and run all the way here. There's not that much danger aside from ranged monster risks. You still have to avoid Fallen Valkyrie. And then you get to this safe area. It's safe because these walls are invincible. So you have an area with some resources other players already have. You can kind of practice building stuff here. This was designed purely to give more squishy builder types access to sort of an Ashlands vibe without having to worry so much about the chaos, while also allowing players to have a way to experience Ashlands while having a safe area to retreat back into. Passing forward, we'll continue along, and you can see that it's not just Skypath. This is where the path has its dangers. It continues forward and dips down into the terrain where monsters are much more dangerous. And then, to give players a break, it dips back out and goes back into Skypath mode, where it's, for the most part, safe. This was originally designed so that people could walk above the Ashlands and just look down at the beautiful assets and get more familiar with all the different monster types without having to go through the grueling attrition that is traveling down the Ashlands on no map, no portal mode originally. As you can see, the path goes up and down and dips into dangerous terrain areas and more safe, relatively safe, sky path areas. This continues, and you might think that it ends at the Ashlands, but no, it actually goes a lot further. You see, there was recently a expansion to the sky path on Path of Magic. Let's call it the full path. So for now, I'm going to try and I'm gonna hope actually that this version of the world that I'm on right now has part of the full path built. So we're going to go to an area called Fader Island. This is after the Ashlands. It's a test of another mechanical system to allow players to collect every trophy in the game and reward them by chances to summon Fader without doing anything else. This is sort of designed to be a place that players can get through to then experience a different kind of Valheim, where there are no other bosses, and all that they would do is collect every trophy in the game. And as they're collecting them and building some kind of town or something, they will bring the trophies over to these special altars, right? And now look what happens if I come over here and I add a abomination trophy. Basically, it's not working right now because I haven't set it up because this got inverted. It's another issue. But this gets activated and then becomes green, and you can't take the trophy away anymore. And that, if then done with every trophy at every one of these shrines, activates Fader, and then Fader can attack. The idea was actually inspired by Morrowind, which has a lot of alternative systems. But as you can see, this area, you actually get to it by continuing past the Ashlands on the portion of the path known as the Full Path. The Full Path was added very recently and actually winds all the way around the entirety of the rest of the map, all the way to the deep north entry point. So this is almost all currently in Palm, and as you can see, it's pretty crowded here. Forgive me for that. But essentially, it makes sort of a spiral around the entire thing. And the idea is to really maximize the amount of path that a player can go down without them getting too lost. Earlier, I was getting at an experience that I had at some point. I never really got at the actual experience that happened in classic World of Warcraft era that inspired me to then go on and eventually do the path to Ashlands, which then turned into the Path of Magic once EWP was added. I found that World of Warcraft for me was all about the leveling experience. The experience of getting from 1 to 60 and crafting items and doing dungeons with other people also getting from 1 to 60. That experience, for me, was the beauty of the game. And the last experience I ever had before I stopped playing and committed to never touching a Blizzard product again. Not that I think you should do that, but I just view them as such a tragic pull. And they went from making genuine games to making addictive products that harm people. And they're just a corrupted shadow of what they once were. And I can't bear to support what they do. And that's just a personal thing for me. But the last experience I ever had before that was actually in Classic Era. And before I left, I was raiding, and all of the Burning Crusade stuff started. And I decided to stay in vanilla, pre-BC. And of course, everyone in the guild, I was in a raiding guild at the time for the most part, they left and moved forward into the Burning Crusade. But I stayed back. I thought it was gonna die. I thought it was all over. I thought that was the end of my fun. That's what I'd been made to believe, so to speak. But it turned out to be wrong. I used the resources that I'd accumulated from, like, endgame raiding. I'd gotten a pretty much max-geared hunter. And just for the heck of it, I made a very basic leveling guild. And I made a new character, a twinked-out rogue, and I just slowly leveled him, focusing on 5-man dungeons with other new players. And I focused entirely on helping these other new players out with the leveling process, helping them get gear that was really powerful, helping them with crafting, and doing dungeons together. And I only had one rule: I will never raid. I will never do anything more than a 5-man dungeon. And I would help people level up and watch them leave and go into the end game experience. And that process taught me something. And it's that what truly corrupted the World of Warcraft series was trying to make the whole game the end game. We took out and fast forwarded through the best process, which was this act of leveling up through this interesting new world with other people who don't really know about it yet. And instead of trying to replicate that process, we tried to rush people to get to the end of the game as fast as possible so that they could experience the end. And for me, I had a profound emotional experience. And that's why I committed to never touching a Blizzard product again. Because I saw that by letting myself, as a person who cares about game development, play a game, I was coming to accept things that were fundamentally unhealthy. That were not because it was a game, but because of the nature of which the game was developed. And it wasn't until Valheim came along that I started to understand that games don't need to be so unhealthy. It's completely possible for games to inspire creativity, not to destroy your social relationships with the people you care about. And I'm not saying that that happens to every World of Warcraft player, but I would be willing to argue that while World of Warcraft has helped many people, it has also given many people a means to destroy their life and neglect the people that they care about. So I'm not completely sure that World of Warcraft's net impact on people has realistically been a good thing. For me, it's been a combination of things, and in some ways was very beneficial, but came to be the most beneficial by showing me what not to do and leaving it behind. In that sense, it was that abusive relationship you have to get out of, so to speak. And that says a lot about Blizzard, the company that manages the whole experience. I don't trust them. Maybe there's plenty of good people in Blizzard, that's fine. But that's a company who's owned by individuals who will abuse and take advantage of not just their players, but also the employees who work there. And I see no sense in rewarding that when there's games like Iron Gate, or studios like Iron Gate, who may have their criticisms, you know, maybe they develop slowly, etc., etc., but they've shown me personally that a game can be a wonderful, beautiful thing that fosters creativity and allows people to open up new avenues that they didn't know before. And that's why I told you all that I told you about Classic and that experience. It led to this appreciation of Valheim in me. And I don't know if I would be able to appreciate Valheim and have the passion that I do for it if it wasn't for playing games like WoW and seeing what they do to one's life when one gets really into them and plays a lot, and what they do to one's psyche and one's mind, and a lot of it isn't good. And then to see that contrasted with a game like Valheim, I didn't even know it was possible for a game to be so creative and inspiring the way that Valheim is. I really didn't even comprehend that. And it opened my mind. It opened up this whole new world for me that enabled me to imagine in a less close-minded way. And now, not only is it a way for me to practice game development and play Valheim and have fun, but I can get to learn some of the more complicated things about game development through this EWP scripting. And that's one of the things I want to do with the path. There's certain things in this game that have just become so profoundly interesting in ways that I could never have predicted. And now I see that I can use Path of Magic as an experience that teaches me how to make a game. And I see that there's this whole world that game developers tend to forget about. Or let's say not focus on. And it's the server-side world. All of these are experiences that I can elaborate more on in the future. But for now, I've just been showing off some of the scenery. I'm not actually on Palm. I'm on an older version of the world. I just wanted to show that Path of Magic goes a long, long way. And even if you want to have like a very simplified experience of joining Palm, you could just join and try and see how far down the path you can get, if you purely want to explore. I would recommend joining, whether on a new character or an existing character. It really doesn't matter. You're going to have the best experience from my perspective if you join on a new character and then progress that way. But to be honest, the path is so long that you'll probably lose interest in your playthrough before you get to the end and have that experience. So maybe you want to join on something further along, a character further along, so that you can go to harder areas of the path and have building experiences that you haven't had before. I really don't like the linear aspect, and I don't think that it's necessary to enforce that upon players. So I'm completely open to people joining in new characters. I just request you don't bring like falsified or cheated gear. Try and use stuff that you actually worked for, just for your own sake. Although, you know, if you do, Palm has a way of finding out and punishing people, so be careful. Beloved Queen says, oh, and Jake, by the way, said, oh yeah, your internet's working. Sort of. You know, it's been spotty, but yeah, I was able to get in another episode there. I was feeling inspired, but then I died, so I ended up talking a bunch, which is okay, that's fun too. Beloved Queen says, I play both WoW and Valheim. I'm lucky, my husband and 3 adult sons with friends play together and raid in WoW. But Valheim and Enshrouded are my first choice usually. But I like all sorts of games. Haha, that's really cool. Honestly, I've always admired people who have family members who play games in some way. Because I think, well, this is just projection maybe on my part, or conjecture. But I think that when you have people who play games in your family, it makes it feel like it's okay. You know what I mean? And like for me personally, games have been a really good thing. But I also see that one of the reasons that I did play WoW so intensely at periods of time was because I didn't have like social support in my real life, and I didn't have family that felt accessible. So I can imagine how when people have people in their family and friends who also like playing video games with them, that could be a really good way to, yeah, just like make life feel more enjoyable and manageable. Because then you can connect, even if you don't play the same game at the same time. Like I said earlier, I think most of the benefit isn't actually from the multiplayer experience. It's from the act of talking to someone you care about and them having interest in the thing. So like you can talk to your family member or your friend about that game, and then it's not like you're like, you know, wasting their time, right? And for me, that's something that I really love about developing Path of Magic, is it's enabled me to make this version of Valheim that lasts a lot longer. And like, I'm not saying it's always super popular or anything. You know, there's times where there's not that many players on the server. But for the most part, it's been active, and new people come and go, and there's peaks and valleys and all these things. And it's enabled me to practice so much. And before, I just didn't have this outlet for Valheim. So like, I really loved playing Valheim, but I couldn't talk to anybody about it really that much. Whereas now, like, I can just like rant on Discord about stuff, and people give me their feedback, and they give criticisms and other ways and other ideas, and it's giving me a chance to learn the most, I'd say one of the most important things about game design, which is knowing how to be persistent when you need to be, and listen when you need to listen, but not take everyone too seriously. And I don't think that's something one can really learn logically. One has to have those experiences, if that makes sense. And that's something that Palm gives me. It gives me this connection with people, and it makes the game experience of Valheim, for me, just endlessly deep. Because whenever I get bored of any one thing, I can just make some new mechanic. Or like earlier, I got bored of the swamp playtesting, so I went to the Black Forest and made it more about bronze. And like, a normal player wouldn't do that. You know, they would go bronze, and then iron, and then silver. And they're not going to go back into a previous biome, but because I know what I'm going for with Path of Magic, it's been shaped in a way that you can pretty much progress and make weapons wherever you feel most interested in. And there's even ways to make like bronze swords and bronze weapons be Ashland's viable because of the empowering system with the Diverger blacksmiths. Pretty much any weapon in the game can be buffed up to be really powerful, and this is part of this mentality of making the game more flat and approachable, so that it's not so much about you conquering the Black Forest so you can conquer the swamp, so you can conquer the mountains. It's about you learning the Black Forest has these threats, and this is how you counter them. Here's life in the Black Forest. Okay, I'm tired of the Black Forest. I want to go live in the plains. Alright, the plains has these threats. You can learn how to counter them. Now you've learned how to counter them. Here's life in the plains. And I want it to be like a hub instead of a linear story. So instead of meadows, and then Black Forest, and then swamp, and then mountain, I want it to be like meadows in the center, and then you could go into the mountain. You could go into the Black Forest. And yeah, if you're on a super early character, you'd have a hard time. But as long as you know all the mechanics, you should be able to do it. From my perspective, I want Palm to be a place people can go to find fun places to build, and in a way that's like more of a repeatable experience than normal Valheim. There's a lot of dungeons that respawn, that give you building resources, and that's kind of what I'm showing off right now in the experience. So this episode, I deviated a bit because I died and then did that thing, and now I showed you the map and these things. But that was just because someone genuinely asked about the path, so I wanted to explain a bit about its history and how it formed and what I've learned. Because really, that takeaway, if any of you want to make a path, I strongly encourage you to pre-make it. Not expect people and yourself to make it live. People will make little paths off of the main path. That's why I call the main paths arterial paths, and I view the player-made paths as veins, and this works really well. You make the arterial path, and the players make the veins and the bases, but you open up access to the world. You send them into interesting places. And on that note, there's one main other lesson I've learned, and that's that you want to go near biome borders as much as possible. So when I first made paths, I would do it like this. Maybe draw an artificial line and then cross over it. You don't want to start with the map. You want to start with the landscape, the terrain. And you want to mark the path on the map based on what you see looking at the terrain. This is going to give you a much better feeling path in the future. And additionally to that, I found that paths are inherently more interesting when they go near biome borders. So in this case, we have Black Forest and Mistlands. So the path kind of weaves into the Mistlands, Black Forest, Mistlands, Black Forest. It kind of goes back and forth along the edge. And the reason this makes it more interesting is because it maximizes the monster versus monster combat, which is one of Valheim's shining points and really helps reward exploration because they're almost like random encounters that the player comes across. So then you can see that it goes on, and we follow the same kind of idea. Go along the biome borders. So if you ever make that kind of path, I encourage you to do that. I found it to work very well. Go to the area visually, look at the terrain, and then mark the terrain based on what you're seeing visually, because this allows you to make more stunning views. When you're flying and making the path, you're going to see an obtuse perspective. This is not what the player will see. The player will see this. So it's also very important as you're making the path that you check out the view and you think about where the sun is going to be in the sky, right? Because you can make it so you're going towards things. So in this area, for example, the path is lower to the ground and it usually goes towards the world tree. And that's on purpose. That's to give the player more of an aesthetically pleasing experience as they're exploring this portion of the path. So I hope that these things will help you understand the path making process, and maybe if you want to set something up. Honestly, I'm talking about a server perspective, but you could also just do this on your own world for yourself. All you would do is use Infinity Hammer, and before you start your playthrough, you would sort of set up these modular pieces, make a blueprint for them, and then you place them. If you've noticed, it's kind of like that's one piece, that's another piece. So they're modular, and that's how I built them. I build them one by one, and then make a blueprint, and then like each chunk here is one click. So this is a click, I tilt it once, right? And then this is a click, etc., etc. So you can do that in the beginning of your playthrough, before you start actually on the character you're going to play through. And then you can think about where you want to have access, build your immortal paths, and then stop, disable whatever you use to do that, and play normally, using those paths. And I find that to work really well. That's actually how I started experimenting with things, and I found it to be worthwhile. So personally, if you are thinking about that, I encourage you to try out using paths that have already been pre-built. I find it to be a better experience than trying to build the paths yourself. I need to install that hard drive. Alright everybody, that's it for this episode of The Path of Magic. I'll finish up reading Beloved Queen's last comment. Seems like a great idea. I agree about the creativity aspect of Valheim being awesome. It's also cool how it can be played in so many different ways. Oh, absolutely. Honestly, Valheim reflects the player. And in a lot of ways, what most people think is possible is only a tiny little fraction of what's actually possible with this incredible game. Sometimes I wonder if anybody, myself included, really comprehends just what's possible in Valheim. It seems that every week I learn something new that someone has done that I didn't even know could be done, that opens my mind in a whole new way. And that's been happening over and over and over again for over 9 months since I started working on the EWP portion of the Path of Magic. Absolutely bonkers. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. If you want to support my work and you've been playing on the server, maybe you've been enjoying it, then you can add me on Patreon. I don't really have any benefits for that. It's really mostly for people who've been playing on the server and genuinely feel like they want to help out. The easiest thing you can do is just play on the server and talk about your experience in the Discord. This really helps me develop Path of Magic and practice my game development skills. You can imagine Path of Magic as a server that develops itself and changes based on what players do. Makes sense? So as you join, I learn more about the kind of playstyle you have. And we have a lot of people who like building on Path of Magic. People who've built crazy things. We have people who like combat as well, and people who like building and combat. But it seems to be, for the most part, that the people who stay in the long run are people who get into building. That seems to be a recurring theme. Maybe that's not unique to Path of Magic, it's more Valheim. But if you want, you can check that out. It's completely free to join. There's nothing you need to do. And if you want to do some kind of support, like I said, just playing and talking is really, like, that's a great payment for me. It's really beneficial. I only talk about the Patreon thing because people ask me about it, and there's a couple other players. I think right now it's Jerry, Teens, and Panand, who have played a lot, and they've been contributing, and that means a lot to me. So if you do get to that point where you want to help me feel like, oh, I don't need to worry as much about finances, I can just focus on game dev and keep working on Palm, because pretty much I do Palm development more than other work in life, and for the moment I can maintain that. I don't know how long that'll be true, but I don't really need that much more to get to a point where it's fine, because I live in Nicaragua and my life here is really good. I don't want anything more. I just would like to be able to continue doing what I do. Makes sense? So if you want to support me in any way, you can do that. Or you could set up your own dedicated server, and I have a lot of information about how you can do that. And if you use my link on Zap Hosting to set up your own EWP server, which is the mod that I use to do all this custom scripting stuff that I have a lot of content about, if you do that, I'll get a portion of it. So that's another way that you can support me if you want to. But aside from that, just like the video, subscribe, or even just watch other Valheim content. Valheim always needs the love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!